thanks again for joining us. We're really looking forward to having a good conversation this afternoon. Let me introduce today's hosts. So we have Paul Collins, if you want to give us a wave, Paul. Paul is the CEO of SkillsTX, which is the leading SFIA software tool. And Paul has observed SFIA rollouts in quite a wide range of organisations all over the world. So thanks very much for joining today, Paul. We also have Duncan Barr. Give us a wave, Duncan. Duncan is a CIO and consultant. He's previously worked with Napier City Council in New Zealand, Farmlands Co-op and BP. And Duncan's got some really great personal experience in his capacity as being a CIO of implementing SFIA and working with it within his teams. So thanks for joining us, Duncan. It's going to be really great to have you as part of the conversation. And myself, I'm Marianne Marriott, as you can see from my little name tag there. I'm the head of client success at the Digital Skills Agency, and we are a consultancy specialising in implementing SFIA and in helping organisations keep it alive. And I work with a variety of organisations to help them make the most of SFIA over the long term. So our topic today is all about making SFIA stick. So I imagine that a number of you on the call know that a lot of organisations can start out with a lot of enthusiasm about SFIA, but sometimes keeping up the momentum with it and really getting it embedded into your culture can be challenging. So what we want to explore today is why SFIA initiatives can lose steam, and more importantly, how do you make it a living part of your organisation and grow it into your culture as time goes on. So we'll have some time for some good Q&A at the end. So if you have questions as we go along, I invite you to enter those into the Q&A section of the webinar. You should have a button at the top of your screen to go into Q&A, and we'll come to those and talk through those later on in the session. So let's get started. The first point we want to talk about today is what happens to make SFIA initiatives lose momentum. So let's start with talking about what are some of the main reasons that this can happen. Paul, I want to invite you to jump in and share any of your thoughts to start off with.
Yeah, it was one of those, when I thought about it, it's actually quite a long list, but better that we filter out some of the ones that we see more commonly. And there's a couple that do jump out at me. And it's one of the benefits and almost one of the downsides, dare I say, I know it's SFIA week, of the actual framework itself. And the benefit is that SFIA is very agnostic, and that makes it good, because no one's sneaked any references to proprietary technology. But what we find sometimes is... Is that what you
mean by agnostic, just in case people aren't familiar with how that applies to SFIA?
Yeah, so if we look at this from a technology point of view, I'll use an example, Marianne, actually it might be better. SFIA really beautifully describes programming and coding as a skill, but no reference to the languages. So agnostic is, yeah, we describe the skill, but we don't describe the technology that we do it with. Application support is another great one. Yes, I can support applications, but it's really good to be able to demonstrate what applications do I support. So certainly in those early days, we use SFIA sort of out the box. And if we don't start loading up the technology so that we can describe the organization, not just in terms of the skills, but what they use, then that can sort of, certainly for people that are technical, it can sort of feel like, so what? And I'll leave it at that because I could go on a bit longer, but I'm sure Duncan's got some thoughts as well.
Just as a background for everyone, we at Napier City Council implemented SFIA about 3 years ago. And I think one of the challenges from the beginning was it was like a new language. And it was foreign to the IT people as well as to the rest of the organisation. And being a language, as in a spoken language, you needed to bring it up in conversation a lot. So it was like it's easy to forget that we're talking SFIA and all the benefits and the challenges of it. So I think trying to bring it into your weekly or fortnightly conversations all the time. And if you don't, you can go a month or so and go, oh, we haven't talked about it. So I think bringing up conversation a lot is important.
Yeah, that's definitely been my observation as well. I guess I tend to see the steam getting lost when there isn't that continuous discussion about it, not just with the team, but at leadership level. what I observe happen sometimes is that senior leaders will implement SFIA and they'll be really enthusiastic about the benefits that it can bring and making it happen for their team. But then, you move on to the next project and life happens and so forth. So unless your senior leaders are emphasizing that, hey, this is part of what we do now, this is how we want our leaders to be growing the team, these are some resources that we want to encourage people to be using, they kind of tend to lose focus on it, and therefore their managers underneath them don't give it the same degree of priority to have those SFIA conversations, development conversations, skills upskilling conversations with their teams, and that's when it can sort of start to lose its edge. And I think very much what Duncan said, keeping that currency with everybody is really important to keep it on track.
I think actually, Mary, I'm just following up on that and totally agreeing with all those comments. And you used a word there that I think is quite critical, and that word is project. So if we do a rollout and it's seen as a project, projects sort of have a start and an end. With these things, the conversation has got to continue, and it should just be what you do. And I think, Duncan, some of the most successful clients that we work with, it's they're having a chat over a coffee on a Friday afternoon, and they're talking about skills, and they're talking in the language of SFIA, and that keeps that currency as well. So I think not seeing it as a project, but it's actually something you're going to do ongoing is a good way to view it.
Yeah. I think as well, to set that up for success. Another thing that we observe from time to time, we often get called in to help when this has happened, to help fix it, is when an organisation's tried to implement SFIA, but they haven't quite set it up right. Maybe there hasn't been a proper understanding of what it is and how to use it. Maybe they haven't had any training to really understand how to get it going in the best possible way. So when SFIA is not set up right, people can, to your point earlier, think of it as being quite complex, this new language that no one really understands. And when people start thinking it's a bit too complex and a bit too hard to use, it can start getting left by the wayside. And the truth is that SFIA is not hard to use, but it does require a little bit of, like with any new skill, in fact, it just requires a little bit of time to bone up on the basics of it to be able to use it effectively. And where we see organisations do that, they are really well set up for success, and they often do go on to be very successful with SFIA. But I can think of there's one organisation in particular that comes to mind that I got called in to help out with, where they saw SFIA, but they didn't really get any kind of training or guidance in implementing it before they went ahead and worked with it. And there was a lot of enthusiasm for it at the beginning, but because they didn't quite have the background to be able to set it up to support what they really wanted to do, it got seen as a bit too much, and they moved on from it. And then in future times, there was quite a bit of resistance from the team to come back to using it again, because they hadn't had a good experience the first time round. So I think it's really important to make sure that it's set up well, so that you have that good experience, so that the conversations are going to continue.
Definitely.
And what do you two think in terms of what leaders should be watching out for to make sure that they catch these situations before they might start to happen? What's been something you've noticed, Paul?
Currency is the word I'm going to use, and we encourage leadership to monitor this from the point of view of, are people engaged with their career development? One of the common things we see, and I say it's a big sigh of relief, right? We've got a skill inventory and we use SFIA, and we might have done some good education, but then there's not that recognition that skills are changing all the time, and we're not just increasing them. If we haven't used a skill for a while, it sort of drops off our skill profile. And if that isn't being constantly maintained, and there'll be different cadence for different organizations in terms of what that is. But, if you're not seeing that activity, someone's skill profile hasn't changed for 6 months, that is definitely a sign that we've started to switch off and reverted maybe to our old ways of working. That's a real key one for me.
What do you think, Duncan?
I think the way we implemented it, we certainly had some very engaged people, but we also had some people that couldn't quite see what was in it for them. We linked it to taking the skills framework, linking it to a training framework, and then allocating 4 hours a month to say, go and do some online training. Quite a few of the people say, hey, there's nothing in it for me, I don't want to learn this. And it was actually, they were disinterested, but that was probably more about the people themselves. Those that were keen loved it. But trying to sell it to everyone was always a hard thing, because we didn't mandate it. We said, hey, we're doing the framework, your job description's in the framework, but we're going to give you 4 hours a month to do some training. And they go, I don't think I'll learn anything. I don't want to be part of it. I'm not going to upskill. And that was just like, well, we can take a horse to water, but we can't make it drink. So the disinterest was probably more about the people involved, as opposed to we had some people that were doing it all the time. So yeah, it's not, I don't think it's quite, well, we struggled. It's not for everyone.
Do you think then it would be a bit of a flag if there were more than, say, just one or two who were individually of that kind of persuasion?
Yep. There was, so the department was 40 staff, and there's probably about 10 that disengaged. But if you did your team profile, you probably find they're the ones that need the most help, not the least help. So that's just man management, I think.
Sure. You must spot that as well, Marianne, in terms of when you're working with some of the clients, the signs that pop out that say, I think these people are switching off.
Yeah, and Duncan's quite right. There are always people in a team who are going to be really enthusiastic about using something like SFIA, and there are always some people who are going to either maybe not think that that's something they want to devote their time to if they're particularly busy and they have a lot of demands on them, or they might, for just individual reasons, think that it's not something that they want to work with. And everyone's different. You get people of all kinds of persuasions, but I think there's a difference between people who are deprioritizing it and people who are kind of actively hostile towards using something that's development related. And I think you definitely want to watch out for individuals who might, I suppose, poison the well and bring other people down and stop engagement elsewhere in the team. And if there are those that are deprioritizing it, you probably want to find out why that is and help them to give the right level of focus to it. Because, I guess from a leadership perspective, if you've invested in SFIA because you want to help with developing your team so that everyone can perform better, your organization needs to do things. You've got skills over here, but you need to have skills over here. You want people to be growing. You want to be encouraging that. So you want them to come on the journey with you. And if they're not prioritizing it or they're disinterested, I guess it's time to maybe change tack with comms and help them see both how it can help them and maybe help them understand that it's an expectation that we need people to be, this isn't just a nice to have benefit that we're offering. Actually, we want people to be developing. We want you to be using your skills and growing your skills.
Sure.
Yeah, and those of you who are listening on the line, give me a thumbs up reaction if any of this sounds familiar to any of you in terms of your own experience. If you click on the react button at the top of the chat, you should have a couple of little icons there that you can use. Yeah, no, awesome. And I'd love it for our Q&A discussion. If you've got any notes or questions about how you've observed this or things that you'd be interested in hearing more about in more detail, do drop that in there. And we'll loop back and address that at the end. So let's keep the conversation going and talk about how we might look at building SFIA into everyday culture. This is the kind of the holy grail of using SFIA. You go to all the trouble of implementing it, and you want it to be used, and you want it to be living and breathing and become a resource that's really well taken up by your team. So what do we all think it looks like when SFIA is actually part of the culture? And for those of you listening, I'd love you to drop this in the chat too. What do you see happening when SFIA is really becoming part of the culture? Duncan, what's your take on this?
I think that one of the reasons we brought SFIA in is we had quite a high staff churn, and by bringing it in, it realigned our job descriptions. We had them all rewritten. I think it gave a relevancy to people's roles. It allowed us to benchmark better against the strategic pay framework that HR used. So we became a bit of a leader in staff development in the organisation. So it was quite uplifting, and a lot of people saw that true benefit.
So it started integrating into various other practices, and once that happened, you saw an even greater uplift because it almost became systemic, bringing those things together.
Bring it together. We reflect a year later. We had no staff churn for 3 years afterwards. So I would say the program worked.
Wow.
So people were more satisfied in what they were doing. So and I know this is just one of the tools that we used.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's usually more to it, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a great result, actually.
First-hand experience, always good. I mean, that's a great statistic as well. Geez, yeah, there's a couple of things that jump out, and it takes us back really to the early days. We had a hashtag that we used to use quite a bit, and it sort of covers the cultural aspects. And then the hashtag was "We Own Our Skills," making a very strong point of the fact that skill development is not something that's done to you. It's something you're actively involved with. And SFIA gives the language, that language, as Duncan was mentioning before, to express yourself and where you want to go. And, this is my development path. We encourage organizations that when they're looking at development, it's not just about the job that they're doing currently, but what is the job you want to do in future? And let's start moving towards that. And that becomes like a pull from the employee side. Like, what can I do next? What can I do next? How do I develop this skill? And when the conversation switches from go and do this to what can I do next, I think that's when we know that culture shift has happened. And I think you're spot on there, Duncan, before that it isn't for everybody. So some people are pretty happy. They like what they do. They get the paycheck, they go surfing at the weekend. That's great. They're doing a great job. But then there are others that can use this to truly drive their career, pivots their career, if we want to use some, current terminology. And when we see that in terms of usually expressed through the development action plan and the fact that they are tracking against the future position, then, it feels like SFIA is doing what it was meant to do, all around that development piece. I'll refer back to you there, Marianne. I've got a couple of others, but I think we might get covered in the other aspects of the presentation or the talk. So,
no, I agree with you, and I think I had a little happy moment recently where I saw some evidence of exactly this happening. Someone who's working in one of our current client organizations, they recently went through a transformation, and she's part of their team there, and she came to me directly and said, hey, we've just been through all this, all our job descriptions have changed, we've now got new SFIA skills for our job descriptions, and my team really are keen to get stuck into the new phase of development. They are asking me what the new SFIA job descriptions look like. Can we please talk about this together? Can we release this to them? And that just made me really excited that the team were getting proactive about their development in that way, and they were seeing this as an opportunity to keep themselves growing and moving forward. That was a really good indicator when they're asking for it like that, as you say, that it's digging into the culture. So how do you think managers can achieve that? What would be your tips for helping that actually start to happen and start becoming part of those planning and development conversations? Duncan, what did you find worked well for you?
So a myriad of things. I think it was we were very well supported by our SFIA consultant company, namely yourselves. And it was continual engagement with our team leaders to check in with yourselves about how we were going. It was getting HR on board, and we got to the stage where when we were recruiting staff, we changed our questionnaires to be around the skills, and we scored people differently in that, and saying when we asked a question maybe about software development, it was how they answered the question, and we could rate where the skill was at, which right from the outset, we know where that person's at, and we could start those conversations. It was doing a monthly check-in on a one-on-one basis with the team leaders, about everyone's PD and how that's going. So yeah, once again, it's just trying to raise the level of the conversation. It's trying to engage more people, and it becomes a new habit. And that's the best part we've been talking about. I think it becomes a new habit, a new skill set, new vocabulary that you've got to try and embed. It's not just a set and forget.
No, it sounds like to do that, you had a pretty clear cadence of activity that you were encouraging the team to adopt to build that habit.
Very much so.
Yeah, I think I use this more of like an anecdote, but it really ties in with that word that you just used there, Duncan, habit. That, in the world of skills, and if you link performance into that, the world seems to be built around annual or biannual performance conversations. What are we going to do for the next 6 months? And that can obviously continue. Quite often it's part of HR policies and whatever else, industrial relations maybe. But to change the conversation to be 15 minutes every week or every couple of weeks over a coffee, and you're using SFIA as the language for that conversation, and you've got the data to talk against. So here I am now, and this is where I want to be better at what I'm already doing, or to take me to the next level. And to also have real clarity that development is a journey. And to see that journey, and I'll explain that in a second, Marianne, that, we don't go from, here's a skill we need to develop. Great, you've developed it. It just doesn't work like that. We don't go on a course and it's suddenly we're the expert. And to be able to have that dialogue at that level of detail, like, okay, I need a training course because I need to develop this skill from scratch and I don't really know anything about it. And then at some point in the future, you can track that you've now got knowledge of that, but you really need a bit of help to get you to the next level, to practice it in the workplace. And then for me, the thing that really sort of cements this in terms of weaving it into development planning is recognizing between leadership and the workforce that the work that you do every day quite often is improving a skill. And until you've got to that level where you can consider yourself competent and there's no more to learn, although some people will argue there always is, but I usually say that's technology that you're learning, not the skill. But to be able to have that, like, I need some help now, who can I go and be seconded somewhere, and we document that as part of the development plan. Then you come back and you practice, and even that ongoing business as usual is documented as a development action. That can be linked back to a skill becoming better. I take it to its ultimate extreme, that work becomes evidence that you can perform at that level with that skill. And those conversations, and we help obviously our clients with how you go about that. They're really super positive, energizing conversations, where when you put the word performance review, we're going to sit down and we're going to go through a form and fill it in. That's sort of, it's not got quite that future looking and positive sort of vibe to it.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. Let's jump over to the Q&A. We've had a few questions come in. Be good to take a little bit of a look at those. Let's take a look at the first one that we've got in here, which is, can you give some examples of successful change initiatives that have been implemented to transform people from change resistors to adopters when implementing SFIA? Oh, that's a great question. I think we've probably all got examples we could use from that. Duncan, do you want to jump in with any of your experiences?
I think in our world it was very much a mental mindset, because what we linked, as I said before, we linked not only going to SFIA, having our JDs done, we also gave people a subscription to SkillsTX, the SFIA framework, and we linked, we care about you, here's a tool to use, we're giving you time to do it, and we valued that time and licensing probably about $4,000 a year. So we were investing in people. A lot of it was free labor, but we were investing in them, and I think that that focus on people's own self-belief and self-willingness was really uplifting. And I think that turned a lot of people, because in the past nothing happened. You might get a conference once every 2 years if you were lucky, and it's usually the same people. So a lot of people that weren't probably targeted in the past suddenly got a lot of love and attention, and I think that changed the way, because it was about them, it wasn't about me. It was about them, and it was about their soul and their personal traits that we were developing.
Yeah, no, definitely. When people understand the value to them, you can see that change. Something that we've seen from time to time is that people can resist because they perhaps don't have or don't understand complete information about who gets to see their data. So, once I've had my SFIA profile completed, who can see that? Is that going to be used to evaluate me out of the organization as part of a transformation? It's one of the big worries that we see people get. Or is everyone in the organization going to see my profile? How private is it going to be? What are you going to do with it? Where is it stored? Is the data secure? So we find that over communicating the security of the information and what it is and is not going to be used for, and doing that really, really early, can help those people who might be resistant for those reasons. So always over communicate what you're doing with SFIA, so that there's no doubt in people's minds that there should be no hidden agendas with it. It should be a very positive initiative, and always be really clear, and especially in today's world, what you're doing and how you're using that data.
I think that's right, Marianne. It's tell people it's for good, which it is, as always was.
Yeah, and that's what it's designed for sure. All right, let's look at the next question we've got here. When the organisation starts to consider the skills required for role, not just qualifications, they are showing that SFIA is part of the culture. Yeah, that's a really great observation. It's that whole point of what SFIA is about showing us skills, things that you can do in the real world, not just qualifications. Lots of people can go off and get a certification. That can be an empty thing if you can't then apply that certification to the work that you're doing. Paul, what do you think about that?
100% that. In fact, that's one of the big deals these days, that SFIA allows people to express themselves, and it's one of the benefits that we put out there. And for neurodivergent people, that's a good way for them to express their skills. When qualifications is to us a piece of evidence that might support a skill, but it's a great way to express yourself, and then you do know it's part of your culture.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it hones in on people's ability to get the job done.
Yeah.
And that's what you want at the end of the day, because you want practical people doing practical things to advance your organisation. You can come in with Cisco CCNA, but not actually understand the impact because you haven't had the real world experience.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's look at the last question we've got here, which is, can you share more detail on how SFIA and its impact on position description banding? What did you do to make this a success? By position description banding, I'm guessing you mean how SFIA maps to position descriptions, rather than how SFIA might create remuneration bands or levels of roles. So I'll focus it there to start with. So how? Just got a hand raised. Did you want to clarify that? I'm just gonna can I unmute you? No, it doesn't look like I can do that. Sorry, but feel free to add a little anecdote into your chat. But yeah, let's get into a bit more of that on how SFIA impacted being able to put together position descriptions or map it to existing position descriptions. Duncan, when you've done this with your teams, what's the response from people being like to all of a sudden having SFIA skills associated with their roles?
I think what it raised was the overall complexity of what the digital world is about. And if I took sort of a level 3 network engineer, and the SFIA skill set better described the impact and the complexity of the world we work in, and that alone helped when it was translated back to the strategic pay framework, which is what the council used. It's the gravitas of if things went wrong, and that allowed pay banding changes. Some people might move 2 or 3 grades, and that allowed market sentiment or market data to be brought into line. So that was one of the side benefits, were some roles changed grades because we could better describe the complexity of the role.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, and I've seen that exact thing actually across multiple organisations once they do that, and it creates as you say, a sense of better structure and perhaps a fairer structure in relation to what someone's actually doing. Paul, do you want to add anything to that?
Pretty much what you guys said, and just taking a sort of a bit of a public sector or even big enterprise, that we do use this banding to recognise career progression. The only thing I say is you do the mapping very carefully and consistently. So, if you've got a particular band, and I'll just pick one out of Australian Government APS 6, when we're defining roles around APS 6, the levels in SFIA will be pretty consistent. We won't suddenly create a role that's out of alignment with that remuneration sort of band. And in some of the enterprises, before we even got into the defining of the roles, up front we did this massive mapping exercise between levels of responsibility and the bands, so that when we did build them, we got them consistent, and we weren't disrupting the remuneration system or process. So we sort of can almost sit them alongside, actually, can't we? We can look at SFIA from a development point of view, and the remuneration stuff still goes through remuneration committees and everything else. So
yeah, all right.
It makes it more justifiable.
Yeah, it's giving it some more of an evidentiary basis, isn't it? Yeah. Rather than it being a bit arbitrary or based on criteria that don't necessarily stack up in all of the ways you would like them to stack up.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions for the moment, and we have hit time. So in that case, I might bring things to a close. So thanks very much, Duncan and Paul, for joining and for sharing your stories. And thanks to everyone else who's joined us on the call today.
Thank you. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for everyone.
To those who are listening, I'm going to send out an email shortly with links to the video from today, and if possible, if I'm able to, I'll see if I can include a downloadable transcript. And just before we close, if you're keen to talk through these ideas further, please get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. So chat to Paul and the SkillsTX team for more on SFIA software that works and keeps team data actionable and current. And if you're keen to talk more about digital strategy, cybersecurity, or IT governance, then we highly recommend connecting in with Duncan. And if you'd like to kickstart or revitalise your SFIA journey, get in touch with me at the Digital Skills Agency. This is what we love to do. So we hope you leave today with practical ideas for making SFIA stick, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Bye.